Hello, and welcome to the Security Industry Association Vertical Insight Symposium on Data Center Security. I am Ron Hawkins, Senior Director of Industry Relations for the Security Industry Association. SIA is the leading trade association for security technology businesses with more than 1,600 corporate members, including manufacturers, integrators, service providers, practitioners, and others. Check out all of our resources and services at securityindustry.org. Data centers are quickly becoming a new sector of critical infrastructure, and our panelists today will provide insights on how to secure these facilities. As a side note, SIA will soon be launching a data center advisory board to examine and address the issues that we'll be talking about today. If you, meaning you as attendees, would like to participate in this group, if you'd like to learn more about participating in this group, please message me here, or you can email our CEO, Don Erickson, at derikson@securityindustry.org. That's DERICKSON at securityindustry.org. Back to the webinar. Please remember that we will have a Q&A at the end of each session, so click on that icon anytime to ask questions. We have a full agenda today and might run a bit past the top of the hour, but if you do have to leave early and you happen to miss anything, you can always watch a recording of this symposium on the SIA website. Before we get started, I want to make sure to thank our sponsors, Allegion, Sage Integration, and Wesco, 3 leaders in the security space, and all very and active supporters of SIA. Learn more about these companies on their websites, all easy to remember, allegion.com, sageintegration.com, and wesco.com. Our first session features a pair of security experts who will take a closer look at the layers of security around a data center. So I'd like to ask each of them to introduce themselves. And Eric, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Ron. Eric West, Allegion. I am the Global Data Center Business Leader. I've been with Allegion for about 9 years now. Been in the industry about 27 years.
All right, thanks, Eric. And now we'll turn to Cole.
Hey, it's Cole Fryer with Sage Integration, Director of Sales based out of Austin, Texas. I've been in the industry about 15 years now.
All right, thanks, Cole. And a special thank you to Cole for dialing into the symposium from the airport. He has a flight coming up in less than an hour, so appreciate his commitment to this event. All right, so as mentioned in the introduction, want to talk a little bit about layers of security, particularly as they relate to data centers. So I want to talk about some of the key considerations for each of these layers, starting from the outside and moving in. So let's start with perimeter security. That's pretty much as outside as you could get. So what are some of the key factors that practitioners and integrators and solutions providers want to consider when you talk about perimeter security for a data center?
I can jump in here, Ron. So typically what you'll find is very similar to that whole castle approach as far as, you have the moat, then you have the walls, the bridge that goes down, things like that. So everybody's pretty familiar with that type of setup. What you'd want to do is have a single choke point, basically. So you don't want multiple entries inside of the data center. Having an intercom there that goes back to your security staff that vets the visitor coming in there. Preferably if the visitor is on a list that the clients, and when I say clients, inside the actual data center, so the tenants, so to say. So a lot of AWSs, a lot of your AI companies, they will actually send out a message over to the data center group and have the visitor validated upon entry. So that barrier of entry typically is what we see. Obviously, cameras are definitely a part of that, but I think having a structure from the operations center and management staff to know who's coming in. There's no unwanted vendors, UPS drivers, FedEx drivers, things like that. They have their own type of protocol, what they'll do going in there. But that's typically what we see. Again, your barrier, your gates. So a lot of them have anti-climb fences. There are some that are kicking around the electrified fences out there. I know there are a couple companies that offer that as well. Not anything to damage anybody permanently, but enough to be a nuisance where they'll think twice before jumping on that. So that's typically what we see.
Right. Thanks, Cole. All right. So Eric, so this is the first access point. So what kind of controls do you have in place there?
Well, primarily, as he said, you're going to have your vehicle barriers there, your fencing, but also you're going to have turnstiles there, right? For your pedestrian traffic, people that work there daily, who don't go through that same protocol, access in or out. Along with, obviously the cameras and radar detection systems, if applicable.
Right. All right. So yeah, you both mentioned cameras and video surveillance. How do those fit into this picture? The video surveillance just at the perimeter for the purposes of this part of the discussion.
I think the video surveillance is there to basically keep an eye on everything external, right? So anything outside of the perimeter. But then once we get into that second layer, right, that once you're inside the space, but not yet in the building, that space, they want to be able to track people. They want to be able to track objects moving through around the building, just to identify any threats and or suspicious activity.
Right. All right. So once we get in, sorry, Cole.
One thing as well as the LPR cameras. So there's LPR cameras typically on a lot of the data centers here, not only for if it integrates with the access control systems on letting someone in, but also validating the person, the vehicle they came in there with as well.
Is that the main analytic that you see being used at data centers, the LPR?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, there's a lot of it when we're talking about perimeter fencing that they'll use analytics on basic, motion, foot traffic, things like that are just walked around the perimeter. But as far as the gates are, yeah, LPR is almost on most of the data centers I see. And they'll just integrate a lot of the large enterprise systems like your Genetechs and your Vigilons and Milestones. They have that built into the system, so you can integrate into the access control. But yeah, I'd say that's probably the primary that you see on that fence or on that gate.
Right. All right. So they've cleared that first gate. Now they get to the building. Obviously the doors are secured. What additional access controls do we have here? Well, access control and visitor management once they get to the building. And
There's
Eric,
another intercom. Oh yeah, go ahead, Eric.
I wasn't going to say anything, Cole. Go ahead.
Usually there's a dual intercom at that point too. So not only did you pass the gate, now there's another intercom that goes to the master station where the security guard is, and they'll validate they just saw you, 2 minutes ago coming through the gate. And then sometimes there'll be a remote release button or somebody will actually come out and escort you to now the front desk. So as far as that second layer of security, there's definitely a locked door with a reader or intercom.
Right. All right. And are there additional protocols, given that data centers they hold so much valuable information, you're probably going to have some armed guards even. Are additional protocols in terms of like escorting, like a no loan zone, anything like that? Is that common?
A lot of man traps within it. So typically the staff, there'll be probably 2 or 3 guards that will be behind the desk there. So each one of them has their different role depending on which shift they're in there. But once you get in there, then they'll validate the whole visitor management type of, did they expect you that day? Did the clients, put you into their visitor management portal so that they can validate it and then go through your driver's license? Again, it seems that most of the data centers are pretty well buttoned up from an operation perspective. I don't feel like many of them miss that that particular step, just given the criticality of everything that's in there. It is not a prison, but they're getting pretty close. They're pretty close to that.
I would say too, a lot of when you get in there and you check in and everything's been validated, there's that extra part of security where if you're going into certain areas within a data center, they've got to check your person. So, making sure you don't have any electronics or what, depending on where you're going within the data center.
Right. What about the kind of locks that you see being used in data centers?
A lot of the locks are going to be almost institutional, right? So we're looking at mortise locks, panic devices, obviously a lot of electromechanical devices used within there, because most of the doors and openings are electrified and controlled by the access control system.
Right. All right. So talked about a lot of different technologies here, between access control and video and other stuff, LPR, et cetera. So different manufacturers, different solutions. How do you make it all work together into one integrated solution? And Cole, I'll start with you on this if you don't mind.
There's not a data center out there that's using a system that you haven't heard of before. So a lot of them have been very well vetted. They're definitely at the upper tier of the enterprise systems that are out there. As far as upkeep and things like that, 10 out of 10 have maintenance plans, and there is protocol that there's a camera down, there's spares. I think what's important with data centers is there is no downtime. There cannot be downtime. So extra layers within the access control and that integration, could be something as small as, soldering any of the devices in the field so they don't come undone. All the data center clients that we work with, we do have spare parts for them. So they have them on hand. And a lot of the times the staff actually comes from the integrator world or the manufacturer world. So they do know how to program troubleshoot immediely when they're on staff. So as far as the integration, they're very well versed. The staff is trained on any new staff that comes on there, they have a protocol for them to go through to learn the system, to be able to navigate it seamlessly. The operating procedures, if this and this, that type of philosophy has definitely been adopted by every data center client that we've had. But yeah, I mean, these systems are, most clients outside of data centers, use their access control and video to probably 10% capacity of what it can actually do. Data centers take that to where it's more 70% of what it can actually do. So they're really utilizing a lot of the technologies that are now being built inside these the enterprise systems.
That's a really interesting point, that what you see outside of data centers, they're only using about 10% of the potential technology.
Yeah, I use the analogy of like your cell phone. So your cell phone can do a lot more than what you think it can do, but you only use about 5-10%. You're using little apps and things like that, but it can actually do a lot more than that. One instance, I know Genentech has a great product, the mission control feature, and that's something that a lot of, unless you're at a port or a utility, something like that, where there's a very high security expectation, you'll see it there. But within data centers, that's just what they do, and that's the life they live. So they are using it to its full capacity. They press them pretty hard, and the manufacturers know that too. So as a new thing comes up, they're building it right into the system.
Yeah. All right. And in terms of security operations center, what are you typically seeing there in a data center SOC?
Video walls, I think what they do great is they'll have built-in analytics that will actually, they'll pop up. So it's not, the whole, the elephant, where the elephant walks by and, if you've got 10 screens and the elephant goes by and nobody notices, well, they actually have it to where it's built into where any kind of anomaly or any kind of motion, however they set the parameters in the VMS system, it actually pops up. So their command center has an immediate reaction to, if a camera detects something, or if access control, if there's tamper or things like that. So the operation centers are pretty sophisticated. From what I've seen, I think there's a lot of them on the visitor management side that may be a little bit antiquated, but it feels like they're starting to roll into that integration to where now the SOC can see everything from that perspective and not actually have to manually look at a camera when somebody comes in. It's more I feel like facial recognition is something that is, when I say 70% or the 100%, that's that other component there that I don't know if a lot of them are using. And again, depending on the jurisdiction, things like that, facial rec is, it's kind of hit or miss as far as how widely adopted it is. But the command centers are typically pretty sophisticated. They can they can react to anything right there.
Right. All right. So Eric, as they're securing doors, they're securing buildings, are there any code compliance issues in particular that they need to keep in mind?
Yeah, so I mean, the data center market itself is continuing to evolve, and the design of these data centers is changing very rapidly and very quickly. And I think they're doing that to ensure, more productivity as well as staying secure. Something we're seeing is the size of an opening. So you have an opening, say it's a double door opening leading into, say, a data hall or in a hallway, whatnot. These openings continue to get bigger and bigger. And as they get bigger to accommodate their robotics and or, moving in and out the MEP equipment, that size opening might not be the hardware going on it, and or the opening might not now meet the fire code. It might not, the device on there that you were currently looking to utilize might not have been tested to that, whatnot. So we're running into some of those where, the size of the opening is causing a lot of concern. But other than that, the other thing we're seeing a lot of is ensuring that they know where to utilize delayed egress versus immediate egress, right? So say there is a fire somewhere in the building, your delayed egress will stop somebody for about 15 to 30 seconds, depending on how you set it. But in certain areas, especially like high amperage areas, electrical rooms, those rooms generally need to be immediate access. So you can't have that delayed response time, right? So you need to be able to get out of there right away. So we're running into more and more of that as these buildings continue to evolve in the design phase.
Got it. All right. Good points. All right. So we've talked about a lot of the traditional security technologies. Obviously, there are emerging technologies out there. And Cole, given that you said that data centers seem to be among, I don't know if you'd say early adopters, but at least users of more of the technology than some of the other sites, are you seeing them embracing some of these emerging technologies more? And I'm thinking like AI analytics or counter drone or drones for security or robotics, as Eric just mentioned.
100%. I mean, it's funny how this industry has evolved to where it's more of an IT type of centric guidance. And I think when IT is on board and they understand the technology, they can push it even further. So when it comes to drones, again, we've been hearing about drones for the past 10 years or so. And I think from a security perspective, there's maybe a misconception of what they can do, what they can't do. There's a lot of things inside of when a drone can fly, when it can't fly. Is it piloted? Is it not piloted? Is it autonomous? Well, what does it mean? And I see the data centers and utilities and even some of the ports to become a little bit more sophisticated. And they've come to us to say, well, how can we actually integrate this, to your point earlier, where the operations center, how do we make this more useful? Again, you think a traditional drone is, okay, well, I have something, let me put it in my hand or put it in the dock and let me toggle it, let me configure it, and then fly it up. Well, that really doesn't solve the problem. The problem is gone by the time you've done all these little steps here. So how it has evolved now, and where I think the IT group has really embraced it now, is they've come to us and say, why can't we integrate this into our system? So that's actually what we've done. So a lot of these systems that they've already invested so much money in for their access control or intrusion panels or some of the analytics based on the VMS system, well, we can actually program that to an autonomous drone. So a drone can actually be sitting within a housing unit being charged. Once it receives a signal on a threat or whatever kind of anomaly that we've set within the system, that drone can actually fly up autonomously and fly out there. So not only does the camera see it, but now you've got a different angle with this drone and can actually use tracking features to track whatever, if somebody has jumped over the fence, or if a package is moving, something that is just just basic RFID technology, now tying it to a drone in the sky that can be there, 30, 40 miles an hour, which is a lot quicker than anybody can be deployed from a guard perspective. So while we have eyes in the sky at that point, now the operations center has their protocol, what they can go through. So it's something where, and it's hands off. I mean, it's something where we've now used this AI to its capacity where it should be. And it's not just a cool feature that flies around and now you have to see a camera. It is actually a security device. We've seen that for a lot of HVAC units, things like that, where some of them will actually put the HVAC units on their on the roof. And you can now use these for just visual inspections or guard tours and things like that. So it's really opening up on what the drone capability can do. And I think, again, for perimeters just alone, you can see any kind of Google search on new data centers being built around the country, and they're huge. They're massive. It's hard for a guard company unless you've got 50 guards out there to monitor that. So I think that using drone technology to then monitor that is something that you're going to see a lot more of. And then the anti-drone part of it for sure. You saw that being used a lot in prisons where a drone would drop something out of the sky, and you have whatever kind of contraband or whatever it is that's being dropped in there. Well, same thing with data centers. Data centers, if you took down a data center, that'd be big news. So that the D-drone type of features out there and applications are definitely being used quite a bit as well.
Right. All right. No, great answer. Eric, are you seeing similar things in terms of data center uptake of emerging technologies?
Yeah, so to kind of piggyback off what Cole was saying, there's a lot of companies out there who are designing analytics to put on top of the VMS, system, so that basically they can train their AI within that to look out for weapons detection, to look out for somebody slipping and falling, maybe a natural disaster where a tree falls on the fence, and have that sent back to the SOC with a pre-scripted way to adhere to that. Secondarily, I've been hearing through the grapevine that even in my world, we're writing hardware specifications and things of that nature. We're utilizing the AI side of it as a tool, right? So instead of having to understand all the different manufacturers out there, kind of put in there what you're looking this door to operate like, and it'll spit out somewhat of a hardware schedule for you. So those things will make life a little easier for everybody within the market.
Right. All right, cool. All right, so we have a lot of questions here, so we might have to do a lightning round to get through all these, but I'll start at the top here. Do you see data center providers addressing compliance with the physical security sections within ANSI BICSI 002, the standard for data center design? So basically standards compliance.
I think we're getting more and more into the compliance. I think the AHJ is kind of getting more involved now into it. So we're having to adapt and adjust as necessary in each local jurisdiction.
All right. We are hearing a lot about automation of the data center data hall security entrance control in order to reduce the need for SOCs at each building, moving the staffing to the main CSB security building. What are some of the new technologies or products coming that will shape the way that data hall entry is controlled in the future?
Yeah, so a lot of the again, the basic access control systems is being standardized across the board. So being able to toggle and look who's going through each individual door is something that, again, a lot of the data centers that we work with, they have that in place. I think the hall management, again, there's indoor drones that can go ahead and do that. They've got the robotic dog that actually can patrol as well. Each individual tenant is responsible for their own access control system. So the way that I understand it from a leasing perspective, when a tenant moves in, once it crosses inside their space, that's now the tenant responsibility. So those halls and things like that, as long as those are covered with the cameras, as long as you have access control, as long as you're adhering to the visitor management where there's no surprise visits either from an employee or from a visitor, which would typically be escorted anyway. But if there's any kind of maintenance on servers and things like that, has to be well documented prior. I think it's 24 hours in advance before going in there. So, but as far as the monitoring inside, there are some indoor robotics type of tools that are on the pipeline. What's challenging with data centers is there's so many doors. So depending on the halls and things like that you have in there, it could be a lot of equipment that they'd have to invest in. So I haven't seen it. It's not economical to the point yet where they can now monitor it from somewhere else without actually having a guard there. But they could definitely reduce the guard staff if they just need a simple escort. I hope that answers the question.
Right. Yeah, and the questions are coming in faster than we can answer them. So, but I'll forward the questions to our panelists and get some responses via email for the ones that we can't get to. But I'll close with this one, a bit of a different type of topic. But are data center clients concerned about power draw for sustainability goals?
For sure. I mean, you think about what makes. Oh, here, go ahead, Eric. I'll piggyback off what you say.
No, I was just going to say, I think every data center show or event or anything I've been to date in the last 4 to 5 years has been really prominent about power and drawing power. And so the less power we can use within our products and whatnot does help contribute to that overall, even though, what we do is pretty minute. But yeah, it is taken into consideration to meet their goals.
Yeah, you think about what makes a data center different than another data center. That's definitely one of them. Where is it at geographically? What is the ISPs? How many ISPs? What's the redundancy look like? What makes one different than the other? And that's definitely one of them that they tout. I mean, a lot of data center companies that are out there, they say, well, we're green energy, or we're whatever their features are. That's definitely one they talk about.
Right. All right. Thank you both. Really appreciate it. And my apologies to the people who asked questions that we didn't get to, but we'll try to get those via email. Thank you both. Really appreciate the insights.
Thank you.
So thanks, everybody.
Thanks. All right. And if I could ask our next panelist to join us. So for our next session, we have a pair of security leaders who will be talking about trends and best practices in data center security. So Andrew, could I have you lead us off with an introduction?
Yeah, sure. Thanks again for the invite, Ron, and appreciate Grace supporting us on this event too as well. So Andy Jimenez, I'm with Wesco. For those of you that aren't familiar with Wesco, we are a global distributor of physical security, datacom products, electrical infrastructure, and utility broadband products. So I've been with Wesco 26 plus years, and I spent most of my tenure here in the technical organization, running the innovation center and the lab. So I have a pretty wide cross-section of technology expertise, but I currently lead technical sales for our data center group. And I basically support our hyperscale and MTDC clients around the world.
All right, thanks, Andy. And Grace.
Yeah, thank you, Ron. Hello, everyone. It's Grace Lee here. I'm the Vice President at Convergent and lead the strategy and the practice for the data center market. So Convergent is one of the largest global security integrators. We support a very broad portfolio of customers worldwide, from the hyperscalers to the co-location providers, and helping them deploy the latest technologies and the standard across every region there. So our focus has been on helping our customers scale at the near impossible pace, this industry demands, and while future-proofing their infrastructure against the evolving security threat there. So I'm very excited to join Andy and Ron today, talk about how can we help our global customers balance between speed, resilience, and the security, and how the partnerships within the ecosystem make that possible.
All right, thanks, Grace. All right, so I mentioned a minute or two ago that we'd be talking about trends. So let's start there. So what are some of the trends that are driving, that are driving data center security globally? And Grace, if you don't mind, I'll start with you.
Sure, Ron. So I would say the biggest trend we see globally is really the scale at the speed. Cloud growth, AI, edge computing are driving an incredible expansion, and the data center operators are being asked to build as faster as possible and probably faster than ever. So often across the multiple world regions simultaneously, and at the same time, their customers and regulators expect high standards for the resiliency, uptime, and the compliance. That creates a new challenging, grow at a near impossible pace, while also keep ahead of the increased sophisticated security threat there, right? So at the conversion, well, we see as a very clear shift there. Leaders in the industry are moving away from the fragment approach and towards a standardized and a converged strategy, and that can be deployed consistently across the global. Doesn't matter where the site is. So that consistency at the scale is what we are asking to deliver every single day.
And Andy, what are you seeing in terms of trends?
Yeah, just to really piggyback on what Grace was saying, and the previous speakers also touched on it. But if you look at just fundamentally, the critical load of the data center is changing quite a bit. So back when I started in the data center industry, the servers were what we call CPU based, so very easy to deploy these assets. They're basically very simple to operate. So from a operations perspective, you didn't have to provision a ton of technology to support it. So from a power, a cooling, a security perspective, everything was pretty straightforward. And I think in today's environment, with AI really driving this construction build, we're seeing, orders of magnitude increase in the scale of the data centers, as Grace has indicated. So we used to measure the data centers in terms of their energy footprint in megawatts, and today everything is measured in gigawatts. So if you look at like the traditional data centers that were built 15, 20 years ago, 20 megawatt data center was considered quite large. Now we're seeing campus build outs at 1 gigawatt and 3 gigawatt scale. So in terms of the sheer scale of the data centers, they're just increasing extremely rapidly. So the scale of the data center provides a bit of a challenge for the security operation, just because if you look at many of the data centers today, they're hyper-connected. So the previous speaker talked about networking. I come from a networking background. If you look at all these devices, they've increased exponentially too as well. So you have additional cameras, you have more doors. Now you've got to police the skies now. So in terms of hyper-connected environment, there's a lot of challenge in terms of how you orchestrate and how do you manage all those devices in your security operation. So from that perspective, it's kind of solving that hyper-connectivity issue is also one of the problems. And with the advent of AI, the data within the servers becomes extra critical too. So, how do you ensure that you have the right security measures to basically secure those IT assets in the white space from a cyber and a physical security perspective? So there's a lot of implications that you really have to look at, but you also have to look at the full life cycle of the build out. So when I talked about a gigawatt scale, type of data center, and to put it in perspective, a gigawatt, that'll supply electricity to around 800,000 homes here in the U.S. So, this is not a small undertaking, and the build outs for a lot of these projects are quite long. So you need to make sure that you can secure the assets from the build out, the construction of the data center, all the way to the operation and the ready for service date of that data center. So you really have to look at the full life cycle of the data center and how do you map it in the security plan as you start doing that. So I think there's a lot of complexity, but the size and scale driven by AI, as well as really the speed, as Grace had alluded to build these data centers is really providing some challenges here in the data center industry. And I think it extends to the physical security industry too as well.
Yeah, with that increase from mega to giga, you probably heard the last question in the previous session was about sustainability. How are they dealing with those issues?
Well, it is a big deal, and I think the fundamental problem too is that if you look at just the power consumption just from AI data centers, It's growing. You're looking at probably by the end of the decade, looking at 123 gigawatts of data center power consumption. And we have a real problem in the world right now in terms of, how do you provide enough energy to these data centers? And you have to reduce the equation. So there's the demand and supply side. So sustainability is a key part of that. So there's focus on renewable technologies to kind of close the gap in terms of the energy requirements of the data center. But there's new ways to get power now that we haven't seen before for data centers. So if you're solely relying on grid power, depending on what country you're in, that's only going to take you so far. So there's lots of behind the meter types of technology like natural gas and even small scale modular nuclear reactors that are being deployed that could potentially close the gap in terms of the energy requirements of the data center. But at the core of it, sustainability is a key part of it because you have to, reduce your energy where you can. And there's lots of ways you can do that. The demand side is going to continue to grow, but if there's ways that you can improve efficiencies within your data center through software tools and analytics, that can also help with your sustainability goals. And I think that's, again, a key part of what most data center operators are looking at.
Right. All right. So Andy, you've talked about kind of the evolution of data centers. So how do you define the core differences between traditional and modern data centers in terms of both physical and cyber threats?
Yeah, again, just the expanded attack surface, it's just much wider. So again, how do you deploy your physical security your systems to basically cover the entirety of the data center? The previous speakers talked a little bit about taking that layered security approach, and when we look at it, there's essentially 4 layers, and there's different operators that have additional layers, but fundamentally, I think you covered it. The first layer is that outer protective layer, which is the perimeter. So fencing, different types of access control, those types of technologies can be provisioned. Then you've got that middle protective layer, which is your building entrances, which was really well covered by the previous speakers. But once you get into the interior spaces of the data center, there's a couple different areas that are critical to the operation of the data center. So I alluded to the white space. This is where your critical load is. So I think there's technologies that you have to provision there from a physical security perspective to basically ensure that you're protecting those assets. But there's also your gray space where your mechanical and cooling systems reside too as well. So in terms of the physical security, that's becoming more and more of an issue. So you've got lots of different devices that are connected to the network that you have to orchestrate and collect information and make sure everything is operating efficiently. But from a cyber perspective, you also have to worry about intrusions. So as these devices connect to the network, cybersecurity becomes an issue. But also at the critical load too, there's cybersecurity considerations that you have to look at. So there's a lot of talk about data sovereignty. So, as data gets generated through a lot of these AI applications, I think there's a lot of considerations from a cyber perspective that you have to take a look at to ensure that the data, where it resides and which country it resides in, is protected too as well. Because as we're seeing with the growth of AI and how it's being used by different organizations in different countries, I mean, these AI data centers are strategic assets now. So from that perspective, they're getting a lot of attention from regulators and operators. So it's just becoming a much wider breadth of considerations that you have to look at now as you look at your data center operation across the whole of the operation.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So Grace, can you expand more on that from the integrator perspective about the modern data center operations and all the new considerations?
Sure, Ron. So I'll echo what Andy just mentioned, right? So from the integrator perspective, we see the big difference with the modern data center today is really the interdependency between the physical security and the cybersecurity. In the past, we can manage a physical security like a doors, camera, guard, separately from the IT infrastructure. But in today's hyperscaler and the edge environment, those boundaries don't exist anymore. So the unlocked cabinet can create a cyber risk. and a compromised network can also shut down the physical protection there. So our perspective, we bring those domains together into the one unified strategy, not only from the technology perspective, access control, surveillance, and biometric such are tied in with the IT and also network protection. But more importantly, when we operate in the data center environment, we always operate with the strict data center security protocols. So the physical security practice will never become the weak point for the cyber. So the expectation today to deliver security is different now with the modern data centers there. We are asked to deliver security that is not only robust and comprehensive, but also has to be efficient and repeatable and across all the probably the hundreds of the sites of the customers.
All right. Yeah. All right. So great overview from both of you about the nature of the modern data center and some of the threats that they're facing. Are there any specific best practices or layered approaches that have been proven effective in safeguarding physical and cyber? And Andy, I'll go back to you to lead us off.
Yeah, I think really the only thing that I would probably add in terms of the additional layer is at the cabinet layer. So if you look at your critical load where the servers are residing in the white space, there's a lot more interest, I think, today with just securing the cabinet. So you can be using key managed access. So you have key management systems that restrict access. So if you have contractors coming in, you're restricting access in some capacity. But there's also door locking hardware that can be integrated into your building access control. So you have really the ability now to have that full audit trail now into the data center and into the critical load in the white space. So to Grace's point about the merging of the physical and the cyber, that's one area that you can introduce additional security measures to make sure that you don't have a physical security breach, but also a cyber security breach, because now you're protecting that critical asset at the cabinet layer.
Right. Yeah, and Grace, are there any other points about that convergence aspect that people should know?
Yeah, so building on Andy's point there, I think from our perspective, the most effective approach we have seen globally is really the layered security by design. So we have to start with the design phase, from the perimeter right down to the data rack, for example. So that means combining the physical barriers, identity management, and the biometrics, video analytics, and even monitoring with the IT safeguard, all have to working together into a unified framework there. So at the convergence, our best practice is really to create a standardized and a layered playbook that works across the multiple region. Doesn't matter what the site is, whether the site is in Africa, Europe, APAC, American region, the protection level should be the same. So it's not just about technology, but also about program management expertise, compliant alignments, and also ongoing service to keep the pace of the threat when they involved. So the convergence is what allows the data center operators to safeguard their infrastructure as well as the digital assets seamlessly. That's kind of what our take is.
Got it. All right, thank you for that. All right, so I know we had some other questions, but once again, as in the previous session, we have a lot of questions coming in from the audience. So I'd like to get to a few of those in our remaining time. So do you see specialty opening applications like STC rated or sound deadening applications in sensitive security areas?
Yeah, that's a call out I haven't seen. For most of the applications that we've been working on. So if there was a little more background information on it, I probably could answer the question better. But yeah, I haven't seen it myself. I'm not sure if Grace has a comment there.
No, I have not seen that either.
All right, move on to the next one. Considering the high pace and scale and the expectations on high standards, how do you ensure consistency on the installations regardless of geographical location?
I guess
go ahead. That's a deployment question. Go take that one.
Yeah, no problem. So I think the biggest challenge is really the consistency, right? So how can we make sure Well, today's challenge is not about the technology. It's about adopting the technology and the deploy technology at the scale. So, pilot are easy, rolling out technology and the standard at the enterprise level across the 50 sites, 100 sites, even 500 sites worldwide is what really tests the organization. So from our perspective, we actually bring the program management expertise and the global standards and also strong partnership into the ecosystem and make sure that technology innovation are deployed consistently. So from that perspective, I call that, we bridge the strategy with the execution. That's how we build the trust and the confidence with our customers to support their global security standard and strategy across Intel global footprint. Andy, I don't know if I have any add on that.
No, I think the key thing is it is more of a deployment question. For us as Wesco, we're a global distributor, so I think having standards is a good start. But also, if you look at just understanding the legal, tax, import requirements of each of the different countries, it's not so much an issue here in North America, but with a lot of the projects we've been involved with in other parts of the world. Getting products in country and having the right partner to do the integration and deployment is really a key consideration. And there's also labor shortages too that we have to contend with as an industry. So having the right partner selection, the right mix of qualified technicians to do the installs, having the ability to get products in country and then having standards behind it. I think these are all critical elements to deploying at a high level and at a high scale.
All right, let's try to knock out a few more of these.
Sure.
Are data centers using ballistic glass at their entry points?
Yeah, I guess it depends on what's being stored. I would say for some of the military grade applications that some of our data center operators support. So if you have a tenant that has security requirements that require that, I think that level of hardening is used in those types of facilities, as well as other types of reinforced barriers. But it really depends on the tenant and the client and who you're supporting and what their requirements are. But it's certainly a hardening method that I think could be considered for some of these facilities that support military grade or high security type of applications.
All right, so Andy, since you were just talking about military grade applications, so the first question, or the person who asked the first question, elaborated a little bit on their point regarding STC rated and sound deadening applications. So they say STC rated doors are typically used in DoD/government applications. So here's wondering if data centers have evolved to that level of protection, and it sounds like in a lot of ways they are moving. Some of them, at least,
I think again, just the criticality of the data, and it's a strategic asset. I think it's going to move potentially in that direction. I haven't seen it the call out specifically, but these data centers. Yeah, they're noisy environments too. So I think any type of sound deadening, I think might be a requirement, at least from a regulatory perspective. But these are things I think that can be considered as sort of the requirements evolve for these various operators and the clients that they support.
Right. All right. Data centers often have siloed systems with no outside connectivity for system updates. Do you see more having siloed systems or enterprise systems with multiple sites connected to a single remote interface?
Grace, you want to take that first, or you want me to take it?
So I think we see both, and more often we see the enterprise level deployment globally, and especially with the hyperscale and the leading co-location providers there. One thing we emphasize a lot nowadays is really the global standard. I think there's another question there asking about how can we go faster, right? Because that's the common challenge for everybody who work in this particular market, not only from the customer side, data center operator side, as well as the technology partner, distribution partner, and the integrator partner too. So the Intel ecosystem is looking into how can we go faster. How can we, build a scalable, repeatable strategy to deploy that? So from that perspective, one thing we see more and more often, and the majority, the global standard is really the things the customers are looking for. So enterprise level infrastructure is what we're deploying most nowadays. Andy, back to you.
Yeah, I would say to the question, I think we are still seeing lots of siloed systems. And if you look at the data center operation, you've got several systems. So you have security, you have your IT systems, production, you've got EPMS, you've got BMS. So a lot of these systems do reside and operate separately. But I think the trend is to bring all these data points together into a single unified interface. And I think that's really the goal, I think, where the industry is going to be headed. But again, there's integration complexity when you start doing some of that. But certainly there's a benefit to a single point of aggregation for all of these data points and systems. And I don't think we're quite there yet as an industry, but I think it's definitely headed that way.
Great. All right. Fortunately, we're running out of time here, but I do want to give you both a chance for some closing comments. So Grace, I'll come back to you.
Sure. So thank you for this opportunity. And at Convergent, our mission is really to be the best service provider to all of our customers. In the data center market, that means we deliver scalable, future-proof security solution worldwide. How can we do that consistently is really what sits into how we work with our customer and the partner together. So, and beyond that, we know this industry only advances when the Intel ecosystem come together. That including everybody who play in this market. So I like to invite everybody to continue a conversation with us so we can collaborate on shaping and supporting the next generation of data center. And that will benefit the Intel industry and also society too. Thank you, Ron.
Thanks, Grace. Thanks for being here. And Andy?
Yeah, we're in the midst of an unprecedented build-out cycle. So these next generation data centers, which are AI optimized, this is probably a 5-year construction cycle. The scale, the speed at which these data centers are getting built is really something to contend with. It requires a lot of preparation and planning. So to me, again, to my earlier point, partner selection is critical. You have to look at the partner just as much as the technology, because there is deployment considerations that you have to take a look at. So as you look at these larger scale facilities, picking the right partners, looking at the right technology is critical. And also looking at the full construction life cycle. Again, to my other point, is looking at every aspect of how the data center gets built. There's security that's going to be required for all of it. So everything from the build out again to the operation of the data center. So I think you have to look and really widen the aperture of what you can do from a physical security perspective.
All right, thanks, Andy. Thank you both very much for taking the time to be here. Appreciate the information and the insights.
Thank you.
Appreciate the invite. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Take care. All right, we are very pleased to be able to welcome our final panelist of the day. John Lineweaver has more than 25 years of experience in the security and physical infrastructure domain. This encompasses various aspects of the industry, including global governance, facilities management, vendor management, and regulatory compliance. In his current role as the regional security manager for Meta data centers in the eastern region of the United States, John is responsible for all physical security matters in the area and serves as the data center team's technology liaison for Meta's global security and technology team. He is specifically focused on leveraging technology and process improvement. Prior to entering the security industry, John served in the United States Marine Corps in the prestigious Embassy Guard Battalion and in the Military Police Auxiliary. He has previously worked in the Class A commercial high-rise, hospitality, manufacturing, and critical infrastructure sectors. John, thank you very much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you. Hopefully everybody can see me. Sorry, I'm getting used to Google Slides now. It's learning something new every day, apparently. So give me a thumbs up if you have that, Ron.
It looks good.
Okay, awesome. So thank you all for being here today, and thanks for your attention. I'll try to kind of go through this as quickly as possible, but we can go back and forth as needed. Today I was going to give a little bit of an overview on hyperscale data centers. as opposed to the smaller co-location facilities, just to kind of give everybody a little bit of overview. And then we'll go through and we'll talk about some of the things that make us unique. So here we go. So it's amazing to see the growth in this industry. And when I first started 7 years ago, it wasn't anything like this. The biggest thing I'd like to say that these are my opinions. These are not Meta, right? The legal disclosure. All these opinions are myself. And if there is the word Meta in there somewhere that I didn't see, it doesn't exist. So we're going to have the Chatham House rules for that, please. So here we go. Today's what we'll go just a little bit of a overview, right? Data center types, greenfield production, some regulatory concerns. What I think is interesting to a lot of people is the amount of servers and power consumption. Oops, sorry, there's one there for geographic footprint, staffing, what's important, and then systems technology, physical barriers. And feel free to send questions into Ron at any time, and we can pause or go back. All right, so the main difference here, co-locations, right? Consider that like multi-tenant office buildings, right? So shared space with multiple tenants, data halls and server floors or farms, what we used to call them back in the day. And when you look at that, the sizes range from thousands of square feet to millions. Our campuses, and that's what we primarily have. We do have about a third of our sites are colo. But they're located on one single campus, normally one company. And this is the big difference. The range normally exceeds millions of square feet. And that's where we get into the hyperscale. So this is the process that we use basically from, what we call, the greenfield up to full operation, right? And so when we look at this, the construction is basically that phase where the general contractor owns the entire facility, and they're responsible for the security and the logistics in and out of the site. Then we start moving into turnover. The turnover phase is where we gradually accept parts of the build, and that goes to main point of entries, network, live and partial perimeter control, and slowly taking over things like the admin building and then data halls. Then we move into partial operation, which is when the lights are turning and we're actually generating network traffic in the site in certain areas, and that phase can be short-lived, or it can be a long range plan that takes a lot of time. And then full operations. So full operations, basically, we then become fully operational with that. And one differentiator too is we start accepting some of the compliance requirements during partial, actually during early, partial, and then full operations. We assume all compliance related, and that would be our SOX compliance and also the NFPA transfers from the GC to us at that point. So the general contractor's role in the construction, it's very specific at that point. They maintain badging, the control of the exterior access points such as gates, the scheduling of third-party security officers, and general access control ID, liaison with local law enforcement, things like that. One of the best practices in there is to have that GC alert you whenever there is an incident at the site, because even though it is their site, they own it. It's a good information to have for us because there are some tie in there where some of the things happened, and we want to make sure we know about that. And then this is where it gets a little bit more complex with the owner operator with the security mandate, and these apply to the turned over areas in here. And when I say turnover, that means we have full control of that area. And a lot of times it's mixed. So if you think of it like a high-rise building, floors 1 through 7 are turned over to the landlord, and they're fully operating, and they've got tenants coming in and out of there. And then the rest of the floors, 8 through 20 or 8 through 40 are still under the general contractor's control. And so what you would think happens in a data center is exactly what happens in most other commercial buildings. It's the same type of headaches that come in there. And then your regulatory compliance activation. Again, I mentioned, and it's not just NFPA and SOX. You get your OSHA reporting, you get all the things that come with that. And that's when you have to have your plans in place, and you're actually responsible for the auditory stuff from that date forward. And that's when the on-site security assets are deployed. So I heard that earlier and I forgot the other gentleman's name, but when Grace was talking, that's when your systems need to be active, so you have that information for you. Oops, sorry, I went backwards. All right. So again, this is what we call, the early campus release or full campus release, excuse me. And that just highlighted the information I just talked about. I apologize for that. I didn't catch that slide. Here's where you get in the difference between the colo and the hyperscale for power consumption. So when you're looking at the hyperscale, and this is actually changing by the day with now the newer sites that are out that are building billion-dollar investments. Servers are in the 100,000s. Power consumption, I think 150 is the norm now. And then it's, hundreds of thousands to millions. And now we're looking at billions. And when you look at the campus hyperscale that we have, it's literally millions. Your power consumption is a minimum of 100 megawatts to a gigawatt. And now we've even announced sites that are, I think there's a plethora of them out there that are in between the 1 and 5 gigawatt sites. And I thought I saw a couple that were in the 10 gigawatt. I don't even know how they're going to power those. That's just for grins. 1.5 gigawatts is about 4 power plants, the gas turbine combined cycle plants. So you can just imagine what it's going to take to get 10 gigawatts. This is the biggest part, right? Your regulatory concerns. Here, we talked about NFPA, your central station, which is what is often called a security control room or SOC or any type of thing. It's your supervising station. And then the requirements of that for staffing, for monitoring, for auto dial or not. And it's the minimum is either 1 with an auto dial and then 2 if you don't have the auto dial. And then you get in the coverage of the duties of the operators that are assigned there, that these are their primary responsibilities, and not that they can't be assigned other things like that. And then these the ISO 27001 and SOC 2, those are the standards that are out there. And it has controls, right, where you're talking about what's required to actually protect the asset, which is the data center. And then you get into some of the other controls, and all of these different organizations come out with their requirements that make you that. And most of the companies that are out there follow these ISO standards. So if you're not in the know with the ISO 27001 and SOC 2, make sure you become familiar with that. All right, there's our a geographic footprint that just kind of looks at what we're talking about. We operate in 27 regions. We have 21 in construction that are announced, 102 operational building, 11 million servers, and about 2.6, right? It's probably 3 gigawatts now. That's a typical hyperscale. When you look at it from one end of the building to the other, it's a little bit longer than a battleship. So you're looking at 100 plus yards. There's your substation on the site, and you look at your well-defined perimeter. Why is it security important? 15% of all internet traffic flow through our servers and 28% of all mobile data. I'd say that's probably even increasing as we talk to probably 18 to 20% by the end of the year. Right now, the 2.6 gigawatt that we're powering is enough for 2 million homes. Security staffing, your best practices in here. These are what I find are often overlooked in a lot of cases, right? When we all started out in the business, we always live by the mantra to inspect what you expect, and to clearly articulate what your expectations are, you need to have well-defined RFPs, post orders, your SLAs. But even so, after that, you need your metrics for evaluation. I think the most important tool that I use now is metrics, and I manage by exception. And if I didn't have the metrics to evaluate things, I don't know that I could be successful in the role that I have today. Partnership. I don't know that this was always the case in the industry. I thought, most vendor relationships, when I started in the business, had to be adversarial. We had to beat up the vendor, get the best price, just, crush them and, get everything for free. What I found over time is to have a mutually beneficial contract, and that actually makes life good for the purchaser and also for the vendor. Quality over quantity. A lot of times I had to learn to sacrifice. I'd rather get quality installations over getting everything done. And then the management and supervision. I can't stress enough about mutually beneficial contracts and how that helps support the long term. But again, security officers, we say inspect what you expect. Then the other thing is a testing program, right? And a training program, a well-defined program that not only covers the security officers, companies, what they expect of them, but what you as the client expect of them as well. Just a nice little picture of a guard force that we use. I pulled this one off the web. This is a modern day guard force. It's not a bunch of ex-military guys running around with batons and nightsticks and whistles and things like it was back in the 80s and 70s. They're all young. Most of them are in school or finishing school, and so that's your modern workforce there. These are my 7 things that I require from the vendors that come out there, and the first one is actually the most important one. I don't expect perfection. Nobody can be perfect, especially when humans are involved, but I do expect a perfect response. That's followed quickly by the focus on customer service. We're in a customer service business, right? The blinking lights, as we like to call them, that's revenue. It's if you divide the number of dollars that companies make on a quarter by their assets, you'll get in that range, and it's in the billions of dollars. The speed of business is huge, right? Again, when you're generating that type of revenue to offset the investments in technology that the companies are making, the speed of business is important, right? And if you don't understand the speed of business, I would say, dedicate the time to understand that. That doesn't mean automatically saying yes to people. Your facilities team and your operation teams are always going to put obstacles in front of you, but having a mutually beneficial mindset is the way to do that, right? You can bend and massage things into place versus breaking rules very effectively. Leverage systems and technology is crucial. I believe that when I worked in the utility business, my mantra was I will always augment technology with people, never people with technology. I need technology because labor is expensive. Labor takes vacation, sick days. They call out. It's hard to recruit environments. The wage has been crazy since the onset of COVID. I don't know, when I started in the industry, checking in cars on the loading dock, I think I was making somewhere around $8.25 an hour. And now officers don't start, and no, that wasn't back in the Stone Ages for some of you. That was in the early 90s. Right now, when you look at it, officers are starting in the $17 to $20 an hour range. KPIs and SLAs are of huge significance to us, right? We've developed dashboards, and we use their systems and technology to feed those automated in there, so we get the data pulls, and we use those to manage by exception. And then we judge this SLAs against what the C can do and make sure that the vendors are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Training and evaluation, we talked about that. And then the people are your strength, right? When everybody's asleep, that one officer walking around in the middle of the night that spots that water leak, calls out somebody that can turn off that water valve. Those types of things are incredible. And I can go on and on and on. I heard of an incident last night at a construction site where someone had broken in and stolen some keys and was trying to steal some things. And so the gamut are there from, your greenfield all the way through full production. Some of the technologies that we use, and this is not an endorsement of those. Everybody's got their favorites. Everybody's got the systems that they're doing. But the biggest thing that I found is when you do select your vendors, to make sure that they're familiar with the systems that you use, and also expect that those vendors have the actual certifications on these systems that will benefit you. We all have heard that horror story where a company and this is not a ding on Tennessee, but somebody was living in a cabin in Tennessee and they would have the certification, and the company would use that person's name to say, "Yep, we got a guy. We pay him $10 a year to use his name," right? Make sure the people that are working on your systems have these highest level of training. No endorsement of Storm Zeo, but weather monitoring, that's a big thing that we do. And weather alerting for things like, believe it or not, hurricanes in the Southeast United States, right? All right, your physical security controls. The biggest thing that I say is, concentric layers of security, right? I can't stress this enough. Minimum of 5, but mostly 6, or if you can't even get it to 7 is best, right? The first one is always your property boundary, right? It really doesn't stop people. There's not a fence out there that can't be defeated within reason. Even a wall, you can go buy $100 and $200 ladder from Home Depot or buy 2 of them, and you can defeat even the most expensive wall. Right. So each boundary, helps out a little bit more. And then the other importance of your property boundary is your law enforcement response, right? If you don't have that well-defined boundary, it really just hamstrings the officers. So then, you get into your site exterior. Really, that's where you're really trying to detect and deter people when they get in there. And in each ones, they go harder and harder. So, you go from the outside, now you get to building exterior. Then you get through another layer internally. Now it gets even harder and less access to the site interior. And finally, by the time you get into the asset that you're really trying to protect, you've gone through 6 layers of security. So that is one of your biggest friends in there. And that's security 101. And if anybody's pushing back on you, then you're gonna have to work through that one. So here's a typical first layer of security. When you look at it, you got your anti-ram fence, your anti-climb fence, your vehicle barriers, and a cantilever gate, your turnaround. Your backside, you're well lit. You've got your cameras out there. You got a nice place for the security officers. I did hear about anti-ballistic glass in the last call. And that was something that I heard some sites used, but now they're going away from it due to cost, unless they are government or unless they are building their sites to that high water mark of government. A lot of sites are going against that. There's some perimeter that you're actually putting for your substation, because even though it's not completely your asset, you're sharing a part of that with the utility. But you want to keep people out of there. And that also helps them meet the National Electric Code of fencing. And then they have some interior fencing as well for the higher voltage areas. All right. We went through that. Anybody have some questions or any concerns on that?
All right, thanks, John. Excellent information. Really appreciate that. So we do have a few questions here. So one came in on LinkedIn, so I'll read it off my phone here. In the evolving landscape of secure infrastructure, what role do you see advanced building materials playing, not just for ballistic or blast resistance, which you kind of talked about, but also for emerging needs like EMP, solar flare shielding, vibration mitigation against directed energy weapons, etc.?
Wow, that's a great question. So I could tell you my first thought, right? I think that's going to depend on the application, right? In our business, we don't see the types of threats that government facilities would have. I think it's a little naive not to implement some of those, but I think it's a cost benefit on that. And there's also the factor of X with how many of your data centers would be vulnerable to that type of attack, and what's the actual risk of that, right? When we look at Meta, our risk is completely different than like Microsoft that has GovCloud and some others out there, right? And I'm not sharing any secrets for poor Microsoft, but I think that's when you look at the applicable nature of that technology, I think would depend on that use case.
All right. What is your experience with high security entrance control, parenthetically, portals, revolvers, detection systems, and automation of such in order to reduce the need for SOCs per building?
I will tell you the best thing to do with that, if you partner with your integrator, and you find a solution that meets your backbone and your well-defined needs, I think you'll be more successful than if you just willy-nilly pick a technology without your integrator. And the reason I say that is what I found is there's different levels of installations, right? Someone says, yeah, I can install a revolving door. Great, that's wonderful. Can you calibrate the volumetric sensors, right? The pressure pads and the timing of the system and all the nuances that go with it. If you don't get that partnership between the integrator, the manufacturer, and the end user up front, you'll have a less successful installation in my opinion. And does that answer the question? If there's not, we can.
All right, but maybe they'll write back in and let us know. But all right, see, you put up the picture with the fencing around the substation. Obviously, with the tremendous energy needs of data centers, that's a potential new attack vector is to go after the energy source. So are data centers partnering with electrical suppliers to enhance security of those sorts of systems?
Absolutely. We have well-established procedures and contacts with the utility partners. They are critical to the operation of the facility. I don't have the actual burn rate, but I was told that if we're on generator power, we basically have to line up tractor trailers with diesel, right? So that's a huge cost, and it's also an environmental issue. When those generators are running, the parts per million, they get measured all the time. And it's just not an efficient way of doing business. So yes, we partner extensively with the utility companies. We partner with them in DSAC and InfraGard meetings, local GSX meetings, the SIA. Anytime we get with those groups together, we always partner with those people.
All right, great, good stuff. All right, I think we'll let you go at this point, John. Any closing remarks before we do?
Yeah, I want to just jump back to that technology real quick, just because a couple of things came to mind after we moved on. I do think that those are a force multiplier, the turnstiles, especially the revolving doors. They really help keep the one badge, one entry, and if you couple them with biometrics, it is an effective way to mitigate tailgating. It's the inside of the machines that operate that if you don't know them right, but I do see them as a force multiplier, and they really help the security officers out from there. So hopefully that answered the other part of the question that it came to mind afterwards. So.
All right, yeah, thanks for that addition. Good points. All right, so thank you, John, for joining us. Really appreciate it. Great information. Done a lot for SIA over the years, and I'm really grateful for that. So thank you to all of our other speakers as well. And thank you to our sponsors, Allegion, Sage Integration, and Wesco. And of course, thank you to our attendees. And if you are interested in viewing a recording of this session, we should have it up on the CIO website within the next few days. And our next Vertical Insight Symposium will be looking at the banking and financial sector. That will be, I believe, on September 25th. So hope to see you for that one. Until then, thank you and take care.